Willie D Live.
What's up, family? Today, we're taking a fresh look at the mysterious death of Nolan Wells, a case that has generated intense public interest because of unanswered questions surrounding the investigation, conflicting accounts, and newly released evidence. Joining us today to break it all down, exactly what the autopsy tells us and doesn't tell us, is trial attorney Jack Paul Merritt. Welcome back, Jack.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So where we at, man? I mean, did the autopsy change your opinion about the case?
So I think we're talking about the independent autopsy.
We're talking about the independent autopsy because we're still waiting on the official autopsy.
Correct. It's still, I'm trying to wait for everything to come out. It's brought up a lot more questions than answers, right? Depending on where you are in this, that's a good or a bad thing. It's not ruled anything out. So I don't think we're any further along. I'm happy that an independent autopsy was done because now for those who rightfully question the state and the state's employees, we have the families, retained doctor doing their own examination. That's good. It's always good to have multiple opinions. I think it circles us back to some of the initial questions like, what boat was young Nolan on, right? Where were his friends? What was his health before and after he entered the water? Where did he go into the water? A lot of these things have not yet been answered. But all options are still on the table for better or for worse, however you view it.
Did the autopsy determine exactly how Nolan died?
At this time, my read of the independent medical exam is not determined and not ruled out anything. It could not say, not even for sure, it could not say with any probability one scenario was more likely than the other, and also did not rule out that one scenario did not happen over another. So all theories are in play.
Okay. So the autopsy didn't rule in or didn't rule out foul play.
That's correct. Correct.
Okay. But did it answer any questions about what happened in Nolan's final moments?
No, I didn't see that either. Because there are some limitations to an independent medical examination that everyone just needs to kind of take in, right? It's done after the state's examination is done. What people don't always realize is that a medical examination is an absolute section of the whole body. It's not just you look at the outside and you look for marks. There's a outer examination done, and then the body is dissected. Every organ is removed, and then those organs are dissected. And that's typical of every autopsy. They look for what's in the stomach, what's in the lungs, what's in the heart. They look at his general health. Did he have a health condition? Just to know Nolan's physiology. Once the independent medical examination is done, that's already been done. They're getting a body that's in pieces and incomplete. That's just the folly of the process. So they don't get the whole body. They don't get in the condition the state did. And they did make some interesting findings without being able to draw a conclusion of them. Most notably, a redness on the back of Nolan's head. That's the first I've heard of that from anybody. And it's important it came from a doctor. So there's redness in the back of his head. We don't know how that happened. And we don't know the condition of his throat. We have heard an analysis of his epidermis, of his skin, but not of his throat because it was removed and unavailable. We also know the independent medical examination did not do a toxicology. So those to me are noteworthy and worth watching.
You didn't find it noteworthy and worth watching that they removed his lungs and his throat in a mysterious drowning murder? It was a murder, but for the sake of being politically correct, you didn't find it like kind of odd that they removed his throat and his lungs in a drowning death and sent that to the pathologist?
Yeah. So one, this could have been a murder. I think you're being very fair. You've been very fair in your coverage of this. This has not, a homicide has not been ruled out. So there's definitely enough there for a person, and you've been really well versed in this to come to a knowledgeable conclusion. This could have been a homicide. So I'm not going to rule that out. It's not exceptional that they removed the throat and the lungs, because they would do that with every autopsy, no matter cause of death. If you died of natural causes, they remove all your organs. If you died from a gunshot wound, they remove all your organs. And especially if you are thought, listen, he was found in the water. Water's in play. To what extent, we don't know. They have to remove the throat and the lungs to determine, like we were discussing the last time, was there water in the lungs before or after he ceased living, right? Was it a drowning, or was it subsequent to him being already passed away? So they have to. I want them to do that. And again, it's the state's responsibility to do these autopsies, and the independent medical examiner, I think, acknowledged that there's nothing inherent, there's nothing wrong with that process. They're supposed to do that. I'd be more concerned if they didn't remove the organs, because then why aren't you looking at what could be a possible drowning? Why aren't you looking at a possible, if there's damage to the throat, in a possible choking? Why wouldn't you look at that? I want them to be looking at that. And unfortunately, the IME, independent medical exam, is waiting for the results. They don't have the results from this autopsy yet. They don't have all the, I would have liked them to have had the organs available. They didn't seem to make an issue of it in their report. So, I'm not a medical doctor. If they were comfortable with that, then I'm going to defer to the IME.
But what I'm saying, what I find odd is that they sent the body without the vital organs, the most important organs that would determine manner of death, right?
Yes.
And so by doing that, that would tell us, that would suggest that it's going to be very difficult for the independent medical examiner to determine cause of death without the lungs and the throat. So why send the body to him without all of the organs intact, so that he can make a complete and thorough determination of cause of death?
I agree with that 100%. I think especially in this case where we are looking at what contribution did water make to this young man's death, I think it would have been, at the very least, a professional courtesy, a good gesture, a goodwill of the state to the people to give the IME, the independent medical doctor, the entirety of the body, even if it was in pieces, even if he had already been dissected, give the entirety of Nolan's body, make it. I agree with that. I think they could have done that. I think they should have done that. I think it would have gone a long way to try to resurrect any possible public trust, which is definitely in question here. They should have done that. Why they didn't do that, I've not yet heard a reason from the IME. And now that we've had his funeral, I don't know how much his body is available. I don't, I never want to. It's always weary to, interfere with a grave. So I don't know the answer to that, and I don't like that we don't have the answer. I agree with you that they should have done it. You could have done it. You could have made protocol. You could have, it's not like he's giving it to you and me. He's giving it to a fellow doctor, a fellow member of the medical board. Make it available. Make it, show us everything's being, transparency shows everything's been doing right. I agree with that. That was a bad play by the state and by the state examiner.
So can you explain to people, because I've been hearing a lot of people talk about how the autopsy, I think a lot of people don't really understand how autopsies go. And, I've did a lot of research on autopsies even before Nolan Wells' case, but I'd like to hear it from a legal expert, legal position. Some people believe that autopsies are going to determine exactly who killed or who might be responsible, who may not be responsible for a person's death. Can you explain that?
Yeah, we call this the CSI effect. Anyone who's watched TV for any period of time, the classic show CSI, where the medical examiners pretty much solve the case in 60 minutes or less, right? They
Right.
figure everything out and they give it to the detectives and they go make the arrest and case closed. That's not how it works in real life. Medical examiners almost never determine the who. They'll determine the how, possibly. They won't even determine the why. They won't give you a motive. They'll say, this person passed by this means. It had to be an individual of so much strength, left-handed, right-handed. They used a weapon of some kind. They came from this angle and this vector of the injury to the body. But they will never tell you, hey, John Doe committed this crime because he was jealous that no one was talking to that girl. They don't do it. They just say, look, this is how he passed. This is what it would have been needed for him to pass. So they'll say, we saw, this has not been said, but let's say for sake of example, if there was ligature marks on his throat, that only could happen by this, and this, and it couldn't be seaweed. It had to be someone's hands because of the diameter of the bruising, right? Or there's certain finger marks. They'll tell you that. They won't tell you whose fingerprints are on it. They don't get fingerprints from a bruise. They give that information to detectives, to law enforcement. Then they're supposed to figure out, oh, it had to be a male versus a woman of so much strength and build to hold him this way underwater. And we have so many suspects that fit that description. It's not for the IME to do.
Yeah. What type of detective would you call that? A person, the type of detective who actually does the detective, who does the forensics, like to determine if someone left DNA on a body?
So that should be done typically by a forensic specialist. It's very rare you'll see a law enforcement officer, a detective, a deputy also have that kind of forensic training. Usually that's a civilian career, and they'll say, we'll go when you see a crime scene and there's a body on the floor. Detectives, the typical cops, they'll cordon off the section. They won't let you and I go near it. Then another individual will go in, try to lift prints, take photographs of case shells on the floor, things of that nature. They'll send the body to the doctor. It's very compartmentalized. It's very broken down to different roles. The detective usually is kind of like he is the quarterback. He brings all the pieces together, and then he's the one that will make that initial determination for prosecutors. But to your point, it's someone else who will pick up the DNA and whatnot. So there are a lot of different people involved in the process. It's not one guy. It's not Super Cop who gets to do everything and has his little kit. It's a group of people.
Yeah. Are there findings in the report that investigators should compare against, the statements, like witness statements?
Absolutely. So one is there have been inconsistencies in what he was wearing when he was found. Mm-hmm. You saw initial reports that he was just in his swim trunks, and whether he did or did not have a T-shirt on. That's crucial versus witness statements. Again, this bruising on the back of his head. It's the first time I'm hearing that. I've not heard anything to explain how that could have happened. Whether he fell, whether he was pushed, something. So there's that. And we also still don't know where he was last seen. And now we have this new footage of him on a second boat. And you and I talked about this. I touched on it afterwards, where I always thought that first boat was a misnomer, right? It was the first boat taking on water. Now we see the first boat left. That's been pretty much established. He stayed behind. He's on at least one other boat. He's on the back of the boat. He's bending over. I want to know what's been done with that boat. Quite frankly, I want to know the location of all the boats. A young man is dead. Leave no stone unturned. We talk about check the GPSs, check all of the boats themselves, account for everyone and everything. There's only one way to and from that island, boat, right? There are only so many boats. They're all registered. It's all like with the nautical surveillance system. All boats are tracked, mostly so they don't run into each other. Track every boat. Account for every person, every boat. I want to see more of that, because Nolan washed up on shore. He didn't wash up on shore from shore. He had to have washed up on shore from the ocean, is my opinion, as I look into this more. What boat was he on? How did he get there? Who was he with? And then we'll get closer and closer to what happened. We got to narrow this down. We got to start looking in more places.
You know, I got a theory here, and I would not rule out that Nolan was drowned in that pool after he was beaten. The pool that he was in. See, there's witness accounts that Nolan made it back to the island, and I tend to believe I'm leaning toward that he made it back to the island and he went to that pool party. He was at that pool party at 1 a.m. That was him inside of that pool with about 20 other people, and a witness said that she saw Nolan get jumped by. She named 4 boys who were involved. 3 of them jumped him, and one of them was recording and laughing and going on. I believe that story happened, and I do believe that they took Nolan and they transported his body back to that island to cover up their tracks. I think they did that to cover their tracks. I'm not so certain that Nolan's body washed up from the sea. That's why it's very important to do those DNA testing. You know, let's compare the water samples that for the water that's inside of his body. You know, like let's compare it. Let's make sure that any water that was inside of his body was actually ocean. Was it ocean water or pool water? That's something to consider.
I really like that critique, and that goes back to the state examiner better be doing their job. You know, when they pull your stomach out of your body, they can tell me what you had for lunch. They can tell me your last meal down to the seasoning, right? And to your point, they can tell what kind of water was in the lung. Was it pool water? Was it chlorinated? Was it salt water? Was it fresh water? Was there like sediment from the shore versus deep sea? A lot of stuff. I think you're right. I think that the independent medical exam noted from what he could examine, there were no bone fractures and that there was no bruising to the skin. However, he could make no comment on the throat because it wasn't available. So that goes into timelines, and we discussed this. You know, if there was a beating, did the beating cause the death then? Was it a delayed passing because he was alive but not in good shape? And then did the drowning seal his fate, so to speak, because he wasn't in a condition to swim? I've heard he was a competent swimmer. He's a young, healthy man. He could hold his own, but that presumes he was in his prime. If he went into the water in a compromised state, that changes the dynamic. So I'm very curious to see, you know, the comments on the throats, and if the state, you know, the state medical exam had first crack at the body, right? The IME concedes once they get the body, there's already a certain amount of decay and just general breakdown of the human body. And so even their examination of the skin is limited because they don't get the body intact the way the state did. And so we could find evidence to what you're saying in the state medical examination. And now we're waiting for that. I don't rule anything out. You know, the more I've looked into this with you, people are covering up for something. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Something happened here. This was a healthy young man. And they've clearly circled the wagons. We discussed this. These kids clearly got legal counsel because no one's saying anything. Because some of them probably maybe rightfully worried about getting accused, and some of them don't want to be wrongfully accused. There are a lot of kids there, right? And everyone wants to go back to college and, you know, move on with their own lives, so to speak, right? Which is unfortunate but understandable. Yeah, I think a lot of this hinges in part on the state medical examination to to address what you just covered there, which is really important. We're hearing a lot of new stuff as things come out, these new videos, these new footage, these new stories. And again, nothing has been medically ruled out. That's really important.
Yeah. Jack, I got a question for you.
Hit me.
What do you call a white man hanging out with his black friends?
I don't know. You tell me.
Safe. That came from D.L. Hughley today. I was on D.L. Hughley's IG page, and D.L. Hughley said, what do you call a white man hanging out with his black friends? And he said safe, and I hit the floor because he's absolutely right. Like, when white people are hanging out with their black friends, they are the safest they'll ever be. If a white person is coming, it comes around black people, if they're at a party, a cookout, a club, the white person is the safest person in there, because black people want to make sure that you know that we ain't like what you think, what they saying, you know what I'm saying? And they gonna make sure that person is all right. I can't say the same about white guys who hang out with their one black friend. It's like, why do you have any kind of theory on why this type of thing happens? And I know this might be outside of this is outside of your legal realm, but maybe, you know, just from a personal standpoint, do you have any kind of theory on why is it that when these type of situations happen, if you take a black guy, black woman, black man, black boy, whatever, child, if they're hanging out with their white friends and somebody ends up dead, it's 100% of the time the black person they end up dead. But if you put the shoe on the other foot, when white people hang out with black people, a white person hang out with black people, a group of black friends, they never end up dead. I'm sure you can find one or two cases out there somewhere in the last 200 years. But I'm saying, you know, just in general, why is that?
I think it comes down to this really unfortunate, long-standing, it's fear and insecurity. That's, you know, and that's not right. It just comes down to, why do we as people do bad things to each other? It always comes down to some kind of fear and jealousy, right? There's some kind of insecurity that one black friend, you know, that one is making other white people insecure, jealous, fearful of something. And it doesn't need to be, it oftentimes is not rationally placed. It's like just self-inflicted. It's self-imposed, just because of, you know, bad history, you know, and I mean human history, not those people. And I think that's what drives those unfortunate situations to occur. And we as people, all people, need to get better at that, you know.
I don't think that's something we need to belabor. I think we all kind of, you know, get that piece right there. I want to get back to the autopsy, though. So what questions remain after reading the autopsy?
So the independent autopsy, what remains for me is things outside the autopsy, things the autopsy could not answer. You know, I want to see the state examination. I want to fill in the gaps that we know, you and I know, because you've been doing this a long time. I know you know, so the people should know. Again, certain answers never could have been answered from the independent medical examination, from time limitations, access limitations. We just covered all this. There's only so much they could have done. And because of that, they could not get to or exclude any possibilities. People are looking for closure, right? People want to know who's responsible. And we're not any closer to that from the IME. You know, all the questions remain with more. So I want to see more of what law enforcement is doing now in their non-medical, non-objective investigation. You know, last time we were here, I talked a lot about focusing on the objective stuff, right? The stuff that doesn't care about your, in my opinion, just it is what it is. The medical, the forensics, the GPS. Now I want to see more of the subjective. I want to see you really cracking down on the kids, on their parents, on the judge who was. I want to know about that first phone call. Why has the 911 call not been released? It's different to say, the call from the son to his mother, that's going to be protected on so many grounds: attorney-client privilege, parental privilege, right? He's not a member of the judiciary, but the call to 911 or whoever that judge called, where is that phone call? Why have we not heard that yet?
Bingo. Look, that judge, I say the judge should have all of her phone records, any type of laptop, desktop, whatever she's using, Apple Watch, whatever she's using to communicate. Everything needs to be investigated, because it is my theory that the judge is the one that put everybody on notice to lawyer up. I think the judge called all of the parents and said, hey, you tell such and such, they get off of social media, block those accounts. In fact, you know what? Delete them all together. Stay off of social media. Do not talk to anyone. And let's meet up what's a good time for us to meet up tomorrow? Okay, let's meet up so we can talk in person. And I think the judge gave them instructions, and she probably had at least one other person with her, gave them instructions on how to go about dealing with a case like this. We're talking about Mississippi, a state that is notorious for murdering Black people and nobody ever going to jail. I'm talking about, and let me answer that right quick. Let me just address this really quickly. Oftentimes you'll hear people say, well, why come Black people don't do this when Black people kill each other? How come it's not this outrage? Okay, so this is for the slow pokes. Please listen this time. I don't want to say this again to y'all, but I know I probably will have to. The reason why you don't have to have a huge production when a Black person kills a Black person and a Black person is suspected of killing that Black person is because the police love snatching Black folks off the streets. So if they can get you off the streets, they want your body cold or warm. They don't care if you die or you go to prison. They want your body cold or warm. They are not solving the case because they like you. They're solving the case because they want to get another Black person off the streets and put them in the system. So if a Black person harms another Black person and the police know about it, you better believe their ass is going to jail. They are absolutely going to jail. You don't have to protest. You don't have to protest because they're going to jail. If a Black person kills a white person and they know that the Black person did it, even if the Black person is defending themselves, it's a high probability they're going to jail. Look at Carmelo Anthony. So this is why it's not necessary to protest and have people marching up and down the streets and calling in civil rights lawyers and all this kind of stuff, because justice will be served. Just Black on Black crime, justice will be served. And they're not doing it because they're trying to serve the community. They're trying to do a service to the community. They're doing it because they don't like no Black people, so they want them off the streets, and plus they don't want no competition. They are the killers. They don't need no competition. That's the game. So for all you slow pokes out there that keep on saying, well, why y'all don't do this? Nobody Black on Black person get killed and nobody says anything. You don't have to say anything because the police all of a sudden knows protocol. All of a sudden they knows how to gather evidence. They know how to not let witnesses leave the scene before they can get a statement. They know how to track leads all of a sudden. They know exactly what to do when a Black person kills another Black person. You going to jail. If they know about it, you are going to jail. So that's the reason, slow pokes. That is the reason.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that, and I agree. To the first thing we were talking about with the judge, I suspect, I don't know, it's a theory, I'm just from what little we've seen, right? I'm an outsider like you. She may be walking a very thin line between being an accessory after the fact, right? She is a judge, but she's a lawyer. She is held to certain, as having a bar license, we have ethical obligations that we are held to at all times. And it's going to be very interesting to see what her conduct was, because we've heard accessories after the fact, right? This is the kind of situation you could see that it's sometimes the cover-up gets worse than the crime. We already have a young black man dead. That is the crime. Now we're talking about the cover-up, right? Because no one's saying anything, right? And to your point about how the black community is targeted, I've been an attorney now, defense attorney, 22 years. I practiced in Brooklyn, New York, where I'm from, for a decade, South Florida for a decade. The most heinous examples as an attorney I've seen where clients were so overtly wronged by law enforcement, they were, without exception, 100% black. I represent a young black man in South Miami now who we have an internal affairs investigation ongoing because, and it couldn't be more discussing how obvious it is, law enforcement planting the firearm on my client to make him a felon. It's literally on tape with the receipts, right? This is the kind of stuff you were talking about that I've seen firsthand from my side, right? And there's a certain reality and a certain truth to that optic. That is not, a baseless argument. There's something very real to that. Mississippi as a state has a very sordid history, and they need to show that they've evolved, so to speak. I don't know they're doing it yet. Case.
Yeah.
Now's their chance to show, we're with the 21st century. We're with all people being equal. Or, as they've done, they're going to fumble terribly and just reinforce what everyone already thought to be the case. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I don't think all of a sudden they're going to become reformed in one case, because if you go before this case, even the medical examiner, the DA, they got cases, just recent cases where black people were mysteriously killed by law enforcement or suspected of being killed by law enforcement, and they were accused of cover-ups. So they're not. It's not going to happen with this one case. I really think the only way for Mississippi to evolve is for Mississippi to be wiped off the map. I think it's got to be wiped off the map to evolve, because the uncivilized mutts are running rampant throughout Mississippi, and they're at the highest levels of law enforcement and the judicial system. So it's a system. So then, and it's almost like the people that engage in these type of stuff, the type of stuff where they just arbitrarily kill black folks and they get away with it. It's almost like a rite of passage for them. It's almost like they go to school for it or something. They say, it's almost like, when you're going to get your first gun and you're going to go hunting. It's like, well, when you going to get your first gun, when you going to kill your first black person? But they don't say that. They don't say black person. They got these more colloquial terms, you know what I'm saying? But, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, so if they will say the quiet part out loud and proud without any fear of retribution, because they're protected on all levels. And the only reason why these type of people exist is because of law enforcement and your politicians who provide them shield. That's why. Back to the autopsy. Does the autopsy establish a timeline? An exact timeline?
Yeah, from what I've read from the independent medical examination, there is no timeline. So it should and it could, not from the independent one. The state one definitely should. This one doesn't. It should at least establish how, when the last time he was alive from when he was found. Like there's decay happens at a certain rate per hour, and there's certain conditions in the body. There's rigor mortis, depending on how he was found. They should be able to say with a window of certainty, he was last with us around this time, right? Mm-hmm. Now, again, I don't fault the IME for not being able to do that because they have an incomplete body. The state one should be in a better position to say this is the last time he was with us within a window. And that goes back to establishing what theories are more likely than others. You know, I want to get off topic for 1 second. I just had a thought, and this goes back to what we were talking about, and was very opposite of the Nancy Guthrie mother case. Why haven't the federal government gotten involved? And do you think they even should? Should the FBI come in and give their support, give their resources? Clearly, the state level's not getting it done.
I don't think the FBI should jump in right now, because this FBI under the Trump administration is not interested in solving this type of crime. These are white dudes who little youngsters, white dudes who are accused of killing a black boy, and this happens in Mississippi all the time. And so I don't think that this particular government, this particular administration, is interested in coming in and solving this case and giving this family justice. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think if they do, they could actually come in and make things worse. I think if it's going to happen, let's say he don't get justice right now, I say wait till a new administration come in, and then use that FBI. Hopefully that FBI will, have some type of, level of decency, where they say, you know what, we're not going to let that happen. We gotta prosecute. We got to go in. We got to find out exactly what happened. Because I think with this administration, if these guys get a hold of that information, it could they could pull a Casper.
That's true. Going back to the IME for a moment, I expect we'll hear from that doctor one more time, because I want to see his peer review of the state autopsy. You'll see that a lot in trials where you'll take any famous trial where there's a homicide, state does their autopsy, and then a defense expert will come in and say, this is why that autopsy was right or wrong, accurate or inaccurate. I want to see this doctor's professional medical opinion of what the state ultimately does. That will be telling to me.
You mean Robert Mitchell?
Yes, sir.
That's a bad boy.
He's an amazingly accomplished doctor. Amazing.
He in fact, most people say that he's the coldest in the game. They say he's the baddest boy in the game. So if there is evidence of foul play, he's going to find it.
That's where I think you're going to see him make an even greater impression on this case, when he gets that report and he says to us why that report is flawed. I expect there to be flaws in the report. I think that report is going to come back and throw us for another loop, and we'll have Dr. Mitchell come in and explain why. That is what I want to see. I look forward to that from him.
Jack, I personally think they already got their little report already gathered. And I think when I think they got their report together?
No.
I think they've been sitting on the results since the first day they brought the body in. And I think they just sitting back waiting, trying to see how this thing play out. And then they're going to be like, okay, here we go. We don't expect no foul play. I can guarantee you that autopsy come back, no foul play. Or they might, because they know the world is watching, they may try to cover by saying undetermined. Robert is not going to, Robert's undetermined is just a preliminary results. That's just a preliminary determination. He's waiting on those lungs and that throat
and the toxicology
and the toxicology. Hopefully they don't the evidence don't just all of a sudden vanish. But that's what he's waiting on before he makes his decision. The state will resign to saying undetermined, and that's it. And so that they can try to protect themselves and play the middle of the fence. Like, okay, we didn't throw you under the bus, friend, wink, wink. But at the same time, we didn't give them anything either. We just saying that he's dead, it's undetermined. And if it's undetermined, you can't go forward.
I'll go one step further to your point. From what I read, the state medical examination is otherwise complete except for the toxicology. What they're saying, the public statement is, they're waiting for that component to then deem it a quote unquote complete report. But everything that was going to be done otherwise has been done. You are right. They're just waiting for the toxicology to then close the examination aspect of the case.
Well, what's taking so long, man? It's just a toxicology report. It's just one of the biggest cases in the nation. That's all.
You think they could speed it up a little bit, right?
What's taking so long? It's like It's almost like when they have video and they know they're in the right. They kill somebody. They know they're in the right. The video comes out like that. The video comes out within 24 hours. They got that video out there. It's everywhere, and they're making a speech talking about how great law enforcement is. We follow protocol. You know, it's a hard job to do. We did it. We back our men and women. It's the toughest job in the nation. And so he completely followed protocol, and he's a fine officers here, and da-da-da-da. But let it be an illegal kill. Man, it's going to take an act of Congress to get them to release that video, because they're over there playing games. They either holding on video, just holding it, or they've doctored the video in some type of way, and they trying to get it just right so that they can put it out. And typically, the game that they play with doctoring the video these days is they'll cut the video up, they'll cut it, and then they'll say the officer cut off his body cam or dash cam. Now, they do that. The officers do that in the case, like in the case of Trip Brazil. You know, the 15-year-old young boy who was murdered, found hung in the woods. You know, the police say, you know, he was chasing him, and the boy just ran into the woods, and all of a sudden, the boy just decided he's going to kill himself. He's going to write himself a text message, suicide note to his parents, and say he's going to kill himself. And so he found hung 2 days later after the police chased him into the woods. But they find out that the police officer's body cam was turned off for 49 minutes. The police officer ran into the woods with no gloves on, but he came out of the woods with gloves on. Yeah. You know, so they play these type of games all the time. They playing these type of games all the time, man. So I just don't trust them like that. I do not trust them, man.
So once again, I'm going to double down on your thought. I want to make it really clear for your audience, for the critics. The medical examiner absolutely could fast track the toxicology. That can be done. I think they're doing the old, we're just not treating this like any other, we're treating this like any other case. It's in the queue. There are other cases too. Every case is important. We are getting to it, but we're not treating this like any other case, or we're treating the same. They absolutely could. And I'll give you a perfect example to show you how and when and why they can. And we talked about this before. A grand jury, when a case goes to a grand jury, the prosecutors have so many days that the grand jury is available. I was a former prosecutor in New York, did grand juries for months. I fast-tracked ballistic reports, medical reports, toxicology reports all the time. Why? Because I told them this was there was a legitimate basis to bring it to the front of the law. I have so many days before I lose my jury, my grand jury, and I have to get the results to present it. So you're right. It can be done. There's no question. They've chosen not to, and I welcome you and your audience to read exactly into that as you want, because all they'd have to do is say, you know what? Here it is. Here it is.
Right. And
they're not. And it's so simple, and it's so easy, and it so can be done. I'll leave it to you. It speaks for itself.
Hey, look, if it was one of them, if it was a member of law enforcement in especially a high profile case, I bet you they would have had that toxicology report. They would say, here is the DNA. I mean, here's the body to do the toxicology. Well, here's the blood sample for the toxicology report. Okay, I'm finna go and I'm about to go lunch. Hold on. Wait a minute. I got the results right here. Here you go. They had them results like that, baby. They happen just like that. So this is why I just don't trust these guys. Jack, so what should the investigation focus on next?
I think the investigation now, whatever you think of the medicals, that's pretty much done at this stage. Go back to the boats and go back to the people. Start with the boats, because the boats, again, like everything, the boats don't care about you and me. The boats are the boats. The data is the data. Check the GPSs. Make sure that data has not been wiped. Preserve that information. Get a log of when these boats came in and out of these ports. Okay, check that surveillance footage. Typically these docks have cameras. Everything has cameras now. Your phone, my phone, there's cameras everywhere. Track the boats. And once you have the boats, then you'll have the people, right? Yeah. Track the boats.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking too. Like, check those. All of these electronic, everything is digital now, man. Everything is electronically, so they can pull. I'm sure they got cameras on them docks. They can tell. They see. They got cameras on those docks. They got cameras between the Horn Island and where them boys live. Okay.
Yeah.
Where it was said that a witness said that they witnessed somebody cleaning that boat in the middle of the night, in the wee hours, in the pitch dark. Somebody scrubbing that boat clean. So they got cameras between there. So do the dragnet like you normally do when it's a police officer. Start at the scene of the alleged crime. Then you spread the web. Then you go to the neighbor's house. Then you go to the next to the corner store, the gas station, the Walmarts, whatever's in between there. You pull cameras. You pull surveillance. They can do that when they want to.
I mean, it's as easy as you just go down the list of who was there, cross-check it by what family owns a boat or rents a boat. It's like any other land-based homicide. Let's take a vehicular incident. If you're accused of speeding, the officer will just say he was going fast. If you're charged with a vehicular manslaughter or homicide, watch how fast they get into the black box of your modern vehicle and pull the speed, the acceleration, the points where you hit, cross cameras on the highway. When they want to do it, it can be done. Treat this case like a homicide, put all the resources in, and let the chips fall where they may. Don't treat it like it's nothing. Treat it like it's something, and put the effort in. Like I said before, these GPSs, when you buy a boat, like a car, it's registered. It goes into a database. These can all be satellite tracked. Even little dinghies, like the smallest little boats. Every 21st century, you and I could probably triangulate where our wallets are right now. And you and I are halfway across the country from each other. It can be done. Don't think it can't be done. You just got to put the effort in. Show some effort. Young man is dead. You have a grieving family. You have a community that's been fractured here because there's no answers. And there's a lot of legitimate concerns of what happened to this man. We have a second boat he was on. Start with that boat. Who owns that boat? Who was on that boat? When did that boat leave? Where did that boat go? I mean, really, just basic, like you were having a conversation with one of your kids and you thought they got into stuff. Where'd you go? Who were you with? What time did you get to his house? How come you didn't answer your phone when I called you? Like, it's really, it doesn't take, Carmen Sandiego to do his detective work here. It's really basic, fundamental stuff. Track it down like you were tracking down someone you cared about. And then maybe you'll get to some answers.
Right. Well, hopefully we provided some answers today.
I hope so.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Paul Merritt. He's Jack Paul Merritt Law on Instagram and YouTube. Go give him a follow, fam.
Willie, thank you as always for having me. You flattered me and blessed me. I hope I was of some value to you as always. And I wish you and your whole audience the very best.
Absolutely. Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.